I'm going to read the two verses that we're going to do now, and then we'll take it from there. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين يرمون أزواجهم ولم يكن لهم شهداء إلا أنفسهم فشهادة أحدهم أربع شهادات بالله إنه لمن الصادقين والخامسة أن لعنة الله عليه إن كان من الكاذبين ويدرأ عنها العذاب أن تشهد أربع شهادات بالله إنه لمن الكاذبين والخامسة أن غضب الله عليها إن كان من الصادقين. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we were speaking here about the case of li'an, where a husband accuses his wife of zina, or he wants to deny paternity, right? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about that? Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ يَرْمُونَ أَزْوَاجَهُم, those who accuse their wives, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ شُهَدَاءُ إِلَّا أَنفُسُهُم, and they do not have witnesses except themselves. فَشَهَادَةُ أَحَدِهِمْ, then the witness of one of them, أَرْبَعُ شَهَادَاتٍ, is 4 witnesses. The testimony of one of them is 4 testimonies. Now literally, the testimony of one person can't be 4 testimonies. That's one testimony coupled with 4 oaths, but it will have the strength of 4 testimonies, right? فَشَهَادَةُ أَحَدِهِمْ أَرْبَعُ شَهَادَاتٍ, so that's like a degree of figurative language there. The testimony of one of them is 4 testimonies. Rather, the testimony of one of them is essentially 4 oaths, but counted as 4 testimonies. And what are them? 4 testimonies billah, by Allah, innahu lamina as-sadiqin, that indeed he is from the truthful ones. So the husband he makes his accusation, right? And obviously his accusation has to be that maybe his accusation is that I haven't slept with my wife for an entire year. It's impossible that she is bearing a child from me, right? That would be an accusation. Or it could be, I saw her engaged in such and such an act, right? But it has to be a definitive accusation. And then he will have to couple that with 4 oaths, that he's telling the truth. If he does that, then he must make a 5th oath as well. And the 5th thing is not really a testimony against her, but it's against himself. He says, وَالْخَامِسَةِ, the 5th is أَنَّ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ, that the curse of Allah should be upon him. إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ, if he is from the liars. The 5th oath is that may the curse of Allah be upon him if he is from the liars. So 4 testimonies against her, and then 1 testimony against him, against himself. What does لعنة الله عليه mean? لعنة Allah. Or let's just go through the meaning literally. وَالْخَامِسَ, and the 5th, أن, that لعنة الله عليه, the curse of Allah be upon him, إن كان, if he was من الكاذبين, from the liars. Does the 4 testimonies have to be 4 individual reasons? No. That's why I say there's only really 1 testimony and 4 oaths. And the oath is simply, by Allah I'm telling the truth. 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 Right? So that's why I said it's a type of figure of, it's figurative language being used there. There's 1 testimony coupled with 4 oaths. That's why it doesn't have to be 4 individual reasons. 1 reason, and then he must take 4 oaths that he's telling the truth. Then the 5th is he must make that thing against himself. Why? What's the benefit to having him take an oath or, invoke the curse of Allah upon himself if he's lying. Because this isn't an occurrence that we want to become the norm. It's not an occurrence that we want to become the norm, right? It exists for a specific need in society. That relationships can become untenable on account of this, and that there has to be a way out from that. But we don't want it to become the norm, so he has to take an oath against himself, and that oath is a deterrent against himself from bringing up such a claim if he's not dead certain about it. Right? Then what happens? Now what happens is, if he gives those 4 testimonies and she does nothing, and she leaves it like that, and she says, I don't want to counter him, then she is considered guilty. Right? And the had will be applied to her. Obviously, if she's bearing child, she'll first be allowed to bear the child, and then perhaps even wean the child, and then after that, the penalty will be applied to her. Right? But that is if she so chooses not to counter it. How would she counter his claim? All that she does is وَيَدْرَأُ دَرَأَ يَدْرَأُ means to repel. وَيَدْرَأُ عَنْهَا الْعَذَابِ, and repels the punishment from her. وَيَدْرَأُ is to repel. What is being repelled here? مفعول به is al-adhab. From who is it being repelled? Anha, from her. وَيَدْرَأُ عَنْهَا الْعَذَابِ, and the punishment is repelled from her. By what? What's the fa'il? What will repel the punishment from her? This whole sentence here is in the place of the fa'il. أن تشهد أربع شهادات بالله إنه لمن الكاذبين. That تشهد, she bears testimony. أربع شهادات, 4 testimonies. Here again, the word shahada is being used in place of the word oath, because it has the same impact as a testimony, right? So she says she must give 4 testimonies, and what must those be? She must simply say, she must swear by Allah, innahu la min al-kadhibin, he is lying. By Allah he's lying, by Allah he's lying, by Allah he's lying, by Allah he's lying. Right? If she does that, well, she must say a 5th thing. The 5th one is against herself. وَالْخَامِسَةَ أَنَّ غَضَبَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهَا. The 5th thing is that she must say, may the wrath of Allah be upon me. أَنَّ, that غَضَبَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهَا, that the wrath of Allah be upon her, إِنْ كَانَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ, if he is from the truthful. Because now she's accusing him of being a liar. So we don't also want her to just repel the punishment if the guy's telling the truth. That's why we include, that's why, a wisdom in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, including that she make 1 testimony against herself if he is telling the truth. And she is essentially the liar then. So what happens then? He gives his 4 testimonies against her, and he's one saying that the curse of Allah be upon him if he's lying. She then comes and she says, no, she takes her 4 oaths by Allah that he is lying, and that if he is telling the truth, then may the wrath of Allah be upon her. Then what will happen is no had will be applied. She will not be, there will be no penalty applied to her. However, their marriage will be terminated completely. And the marriage will be terminated, and I think the paternity will not be established, so it will be only attributed to the mother. Right, and that sorts out that situation essentially. But again, it's very, the law exists there for a reason, and the reason is to maintain societal harmony. Societal harmony, to do away with discord in society. So, does Islam force the male to live in that relationship where, he has this thing of infidelity against his spouse? No. And for the female, this process is initiated by the male, right? If the female finds her husband accused of infidelity, you see, because of the fact that there may be many excuses for him, in that he could argue that he married this female, or there may, in a traditional Islamic society, there may be a number of reasons. She has to raise this situation to the judge. Look, this all has to happen in front of a judge anyways, right? And that will be dealt with in a different way, not simply by the swearing oaths. The swearing oaths is more here because of the importance of paternity, right? So that's the laws that apply to li'an. And I told you at the beginning of the surah, the whole surah is about laws pertaining to the society, starting off with the most important and fragile part of the society, that being the relationship between husband and wife. Right? In fact, it starts before they were potentially even married, and that's why I spoke about, or not I spoke about, but the surah speaks about zina, and I clarified to you that zina there is referring to zina of people that weren't married yet. Right? So it speaks about maintaining chastity as a cornerstone to having a wholesome and well-functioning society. Chastity even before marriage, right? And so basically it culminated in the verses speaking about li'an, and going from here, the surah will now speak about the case of Aisha radiallahu anha. The case of Aisha radiallahu anha, where she was accused of such a thing. Right? She was accused of extramarital relationships, or an extramarital affair, and the Quran then came to exonerate her. So we'll look at that next week, inshallah. And I think by then we will have caught up to where the other class covered in the surah as well. So we'll all be on the same page then, inshallah. To end there for now. وجزاكم الله خيرا وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Are there any questions, if I may ask? Yeah, we'll probably start at about that time. Plus 10, inshallah. Is it in there for now? No questions? Online?
So if like the reverse happens, if a female or wife accuses the husband of extramarital relationship, and she brings that to court, what are the consequences that will come after if it is that is found, or that like the accusation is found?
Well, if she finds the marriage to be untenable, then the qadi will likely find a way to annul the marriage. Because you see, essentially that doesn't have any bearing on paternity of children or things like that. What it does have a bearing on is maybe her fertility within the marriage. Right? So the qadi will look for a way or justification in that regard to annul the marriage, but it's not necessarily in and of itself an annulment of the marriage. Right? Because he has essentially engaged in a sin that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish him for, that doesn't directly impact his responsibility towards her, right? But like I said, that's just in terms of the cut and dry law. What the qadi will likely do is find a way out for. Any consequences beyond that? I'm not recalling right now, but if I do think of some, then I'll mention next week, inshallah. Any other questions? No? Okay, then we end it for now. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Khalil says we can have about a 20-minute break, inshallah.